Okay, so to set up your measurements for 1.1.1, we're going to need some sort of a resistance force. In this case, we have a bunch of weights that you can choose from. You're going to need a force sensor, and you're going to need some sort of a go link. So the first thing you're probably going to want to do is take your force sensor, and this is not going to be able to plug into your desktop, so we need to use this GoLink adapter. So I'm going to plug this guy in, and this will connect us all the way through a USB cable so that I can plug that into the front of my desktop. So I have my lever set up and ready to go. Notice I have a paper clip where I can hook up a resistance or effort force, and same thing on the other side right there. So when you get into the software, and that'll be in just a moment, there's some things that you can do with this. So first of all, you can run the software to measure the weight of our object. We do not want to look on the object and just Google it. You want to be using the force sensor itself so that we know it's taking care of any errors that we see. Now when you do your setup, let's hang our resistance force over on this side, which means our effort force is going to be over this way. In order to accurately measure it, you're going to have to hold it so we are in what we call static equilibrium, where everything is nice and stable, there's no movement, we're not propped up against anything, and this is where you're going to be taking data for your lever. Now to take data on your wheel and axle, it's going to be a little bit more tricky in the setup. So notice this group essentially, let me unwind this a little bit. They tied a piece of string onto the edge of their wheel and kind of rolled it up like this. On the other side, it's kind of hard to see, they tied it around their wheel so that we can hook our objects on there. If you can find another way with like paper clips and things like that, that's amazing. So if I am trying to put my resistance force on the wheel, it's kind of hard to see from there, but I'm going to put it on this little loop and let it hang, so that if I let it go, it's going to rotate, which is not good. So to find my effort force, I'm going to take my force sensor. I'm going to hook it over on the other side, maybe. Oh my goodness, I tied this a little too tight. There we go. And again, I need to make sure that everything is in static equilibrium, nothing is moving. And let me see if I can get my arm out of the way. So notice how I'm pushing this down so nothing is moving, and my weight itself is just kind of hanging in static equilibrium right there. So then I would go into my software, I would let it collect that data, and then we can use that to figure out what your effort force is. Keep in mind that anytime you want to find your resistance force, you just need to hang it from here, collect that data so we have a nice consistent measurement, and that will give you the weight of your resistance force. So once you have your force sensor plugged into your GoLink, plugged into your computer, you are ready to open up LoggerPro. Now obviously my desktop is going to look different from yours, but you're going to find LoggerPro, whatever version we have, and double click on it to get in. Now if your force sensor and GoLink are working, you're going to see a force kind of fluctuating down in the bottom left, and if we lightly push or lightly pull, you're going to see that it changes the value. If this is not the case, then you might just want to unplug and replug it in, maybe get a new GoLink, maybe get a new force sensor, whatever you got to do to make this stuff work. Now, first thing we have to do before we take any measurements is we're going to go up to experiment. We're going to zero this out. So we're going to say, as long as there's no weight on this object, or on our force sensor, excuse me, this is 0 newtons. And again, make sure that you don't have any object hanging off of that thing. But we also don't want this thing in newtons, right? So we want to go from newtons to pounds. So I'm going to go experiment, change units, dual range force sensor to pounds. And everything kind of automatically adjusts to that. Now the basic idea is we are going to collect a series of data, and we're going to make LoggerPro give us the average. So before I even use the machine, I just want to get the weight of my resistance force. So those little black masses that we had earlier, I am going to hang that directly on the force sensor so we can measure the weight. I'm going to hit collect, and I am not going to touch it. So this is going to go for 10 seconds, and I'm not going to mess with it. If I hit stop and start again, it's going to restart everything and lose all my data. which is very, very sad. Okay. We've got 10 seconds of data, which is good, and I probably fluctuated a little teeny tiny bit. So to mitigate that, I'm going to go up here to Analyze. I'm going to go down to Statistics, and notice how it gets me all my values. So the value I'm going to report is my mean, or my average, 0.2477. So I know my resistance force is 0.2477. And we say, cool, we write it down, we put it in our notebook, we're good to go. Next, I'm going to take that same resistance force, I'm going to hook it onto, in my case, a lever on the side that I'm looking at. I'm going to hook up my Go link, or excuse me, not my Go link, my force sensor to the other side, and just like we saw in the video, I'm going to hold it or just put enough force where everything is in that static equilibrium. And one more time, I'm going to go to Collect, let it ride. And it already looks like it's easier than just holding the weight by itself. And I'm a little wibbly wobbly. Okay, got the 10 seconds. And it automatically kept our statistics up for me, which is nice. So it looks like my effort force on average is 0.02495, which is a pretty good advantage. And if that doesn't pop up, remember you go to Analyze and you go to Statistics. So make sure you are getting the whole of the data. We're not just looking at this and pulling a reading. We need to get a collection of data so that we have a better idea as to what the actual value is.